May 13th, 2006. The last episode of Justice League Unlimited airs on Cartoon Network in what I still consider to be one of the longest half hours of my life. Despite rumors to the contrary, we all knew this was it. This was the end of Justice League Unlimited, and with it, the end of the DC animated universe, the chronology of interlocking animated DC Comics television shows that began with Batman the Animated Series in 1992. Though I was too young at the time to purposely watch Batman from its very beginnings, syndication and network events like Batman vs. Superman or Toonami rerun blocks allowed me to become immersed in the DCAU's world of fantastical stories and admirable, if not often relatable, characters. Once Justice League began airing in 2001, I never missed an episode. I was just at the right age for the show and recorded every episode to VHS so I could watch them more times than a human being should watch anything. Then one day it all just came to an end. Poof. No more JLU. No more any of this. Sure, there were some spin-off comics still going for a little while after, but I didn't read those at the time. I was and still am a sucker for continuity, and since the Justice League Unlimited title seldomly ever didn't contradict the cartoon, it never really interested me. A month passed and we got this garbage. Then 8 years between that and the 75th anniversary of Batman, which gave us two very short animated offerings in the form of Bruce Timm's Strange Days and Darwin Cook's Batman Beyond. Now, here we are. In the last 2 years alone, we've been treated to the likes of a brand new DCAU action figure line, a series of animated Batman pop figures, Warner Archive releases of the full Zeta Project series, and half of Static Shock on DVD with surely more to come. Crossover comic book of the animated Batman with the animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, paperback releases of Batman and Robin Adventures and Superman Adventures, Harley Loves Joker, backup story, and Mask of the Phantasm on Blu-ray, and now this. Batman and Harley Quinn. The spoiler-free version, it's a solid B- in my book. Now, before you reach for that back button, hear me out. The movie has its problems, for sure. At times, certain jokes or moments come across as downright cringeworthy in the worst possible way, and actions or decisions by certain heroes and villains feel very forced or out of character. But at the same time, the movie has no glaring continuity issues to keep it out of the DC animated universe as we know it. Some of the jokes land rather well, and at times it truly does feel like a lost episode of sorts of the new Batman adventures. The action is some of the best I've ever seen in a DCAU production. I mean, we've had a decade of other DC animated movies to really hone that in, and the artwork is, for the most part, pretty on model and doesn't look as sloppy as I expected it to. It's also great to hear the dynamic music partners back at it again, the team of composers that includes Lolita Ritmanis, Michael McQuistion, and Christopher Carter, who composed music for many of the DCAU series and studied under original Batman composer Shirley Walker. I thought Melissa Rauch was going to be unbearable as Harley Quinn, but she surprisingly did a pretty okay job. Would I have preferred Arlene Sorkin? Of course, duh. As a fill-in, Melissa isn't perfect, and it does usually feel like I'm watching a different version of Harley Quinn from a different film whenever she's talking. But the character herself isn't really different enough that she feels like she isn't the same person we've been watching reruns of on Boomerang for years. Nightwing, on the other hand, has some moments that are just strange. As we know from the trailers, Nightwing ends up in this awkward scene with Harley Quinn, and while it isn't nearly as uncomfortable as I expected it to be, it still feels odd that this animated universe version of Nightwing is so quick to Yahtzee around with Harley for a bit. He's certainly never been against fraternizing with the villainesses, but he's never been this complicit. Certainly not this version. I have to wonder what the creative process was behind some of his motivations, and all I can think of is, oh, wouldn't it be so funny if Nightwing did insert super duper funny thing here, lol. Paget Brewster does a passable job as Poison Ivy. She didn't really bring anything astounding to the table, but while staring at a Tim-style Ivy's face and hearing her voice, it's believable. It sounds just enough like Diane Pershing for me to shrug it off. Unfortunately, Brewster has mentioned in interviews that she wasn't really given any vocal direction or cues from the original voice, so it's pure luck she sounds as good as she does, which kinda bothers me. But there are times when her interactions with Harley feel genuinely like they got the band back together, so to speak, and that was a very nice surprise. Simultaneously, though, there are moments when I had to rewind and watch a couple scenes more than once to understand the villainess' motivations while considering their past interactions on the animated series and spin-off comics, and it made me emoji, I tell you what. This is also why it's hard for me to tell who this movie is for. The opening fight scene between Star Lab's security guards and Floronic Man plays out just like something from a Batman episode, but then Planto slams a guy into a wall and explodes him into a Prego sauce bomb of blood. Then throughout the rest of the movie, there's barely any blood at all, but Harley flat out cusses a couple times. That aspect of it is definitely jarring and took me out of the DCAU feel from time to time. Back in the day, Timm and company had a very strict set of do not do this rules when it came to the animated series, and though I do enjoy violence and adultness in my Batman movies, keeping it restrained to that same level may have been the better choice. Another thing that kind of bothered me is that unlike the other three Batman the Animated Series films that had original stories and often original characters, or at least new spins on ones, Batman and Harley Quinn plays out better if you already know about some of the source material. The opening scene right before the main titles ends on a close-up of this computer screen as if to say, "Oh my gosh, Alec Holland!" when the average viewer may be like, who? Side note, one of the producers of this movie is Michael Uslan, who has been attached to every Batman movie since Tim Burton's in 1989. He got his start in the film world with 1982's Swamp Thing. Mask of the Phantasm is a beautiful work of art with an original villain and an emotional story. Yes, it borrows elements from various Batman comics, but you don't need to know any of those to thoroughly enjoy this film. I sure didn't when I was in elementary school, and I wore that tape out. Is it unfair to compare Phantasm to this new movie? Sure. But again, who is this movie made for? You certainly shouldn't show your kids this in a DCAU marathon. It's marketed like BTAS is finally returning, and then it's just kind of a movie. So why did I babble on earlier about the DCAU's legacy? Well, here's why, okay? Just hang on a second, be patient. The existence of this movie in the first place seems to be fueled by a sort of DC animated universe resurgence. I'm not sure whether it's our doing or DC realizing, oh, hey, people seem to particularly like this stuff the most, but whatever it is, I have mixed feelings. For one, this year is the 25th anniversary of the premiere of Batman the Animated Series, as well as the debut of Harley Quinn herself, and I couldn't be happier that we're getting more of this beloved universe that captivated us so much as kids. But on the other hand, it's almost too much. You may not share my opinion on this, but to me, I'm only excited for more and more DCAU if they do it right. Tim's Strange Days was a bit of a red flag that we should have caught earlier if you think about it. There's a slight possibility that it could take place in the DCAU without issue if you let some minor confusions slide, but Bruce Timm went on record saying he's always wanted to see Batman in a proper 1930s-ish setting like in the original Detective comics that spawned him in the first place, and I have no problem with this per se, except perhaps that it seems Timm was entirely fueled by the desire to see a thing he wanted to see. What I mean by this is that the man had already started to slide in terms of staying faithful to his animated saga of yore, and we didn't even realize it. Now, I want to make something clear. I think modern day Bruce Timm gets too much crap. I think the Killing Joke was just fine. I don't think the guy is too pervy or a bad writer or any of the other hateful things he gets called all the time. The man is largely responsible for how we think of the DC universe today. The DCAU isn't coined the Timmverse for nothing, but the reality is it's been 11 years since the end of Justice League Unlimited. His influence on these animated properties isn't what it used to be. I will always admire Bruce Timm for what he's done for DC, and his art style is still something that instantly triggers waterfalls of dopamine in my little brain, but I wish he would put himself back into his 1990s shoes once in a while. It has been 25 years since the debut of his Batman cartoon, a series filled with some of the most goosebump-inducing, well-written and acted moments in animation history, not the least of which includes this theatrically released masterpiece and some Emmy award-winning episodes. To properly pay tribute to a series and universe so inspiring and iconic would require a production of the utmost attention, love, and careful planning worthy of its predecessor. And instead, we got this, which might as well be subtitled OMG Harley Quinn, am I right? Without getting into too much spoilery detail, while the movie doesn't feature anything worthy of banishing it from proper DCAU continuity, I personally think that was, again, simply due to luck. Bruce Timm himself even said,
I personally kind of think of it as a continuation of Batman the Animated Series in the DC Animated Universe. I'll honestly admit, I did not go back and watch every single episode of Batman to make sure that it didn't contradict anything in there.
The attention to detail for this movie seems very lazy. Things just happen because Bruce Timm and company wanted to see them happen. This is no Mask of the Phantasm or Sub-Zero or even Mystery of the Batwoman for that matter. We've only ever gotten Batman-centric feature films in the DCAU, and now this is one of them. Like I said, it's not a bad movie. Even if I took my rose-colored glasses off completely and watched it as someone who had never seen this version of Batman, it's a fun film. I was someone who didn't like This Little Piggy or other sillier episodes of the DCAU as a kid, but now I've come to enjoy enjoy them almost as much as the most serious of episodes. I was someone who didn't think a Batman the Animated Series comedy sounded good in the slightest, and I found myself actually laughing sometimes. Batman and Harley Quinn is not the film we've been waiting 11 years for. It's not the DCAU revival film we deserve, and it's certainly divisive amongst fans. But when you think about it, what would have been worthy? Of course, seeing more DC Animated Universe content makes the 8-year-old inside of me go, yes! Yes, please! But at the same time, this universe had its day. Whenever I see that a thing from my childhood is getting another go, like Invader Zim or Hey Arnold or DuckTales, sure, my initial reaction is, hell yeah! But when I think more about it, it's more like, why?
It was all over TV. I had to do something.
Now, a decent enough reason to bring something like these back is because, well, it may have never had a proper conclusion. Young Justice is coming back because it got canceled before it finished. But Justice League Unlimited had a finale, and a satisfying one at that. In fact, every series in the DCAU that got canceled wound up with a continuation or resolution eventually, except, of course, for the Zeta Project, but let's be honest, who wants to see that resolved, huh? Huh? Okay, me. There's been a strong desire for more Batman the Animated Series for years and years, but when it comes right down to it, think. What you really want is more of what you got in the 90s, more of what makes you feel like a kid, more of that same nostalgia you get when you watch Batman cream the Condiment King for the 2000th time. But the truth is, what you'd be getting more of is this.
Oh, holy. It's not so bad. Smells like discipline.
Those aspects of BTAS that you crave are what we deserve, but not what we're going to get. So to Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, James Tucker, anyone who may be listening, please, if you ever wind up bringing back more Justice League Unlimited or Batman Beyond or whatever, do it right. Rewind your brain to the good old days. Pay attention to the continuity and stories already established in the same heartfelt, dedicated way you used to. Place us right back in that world. Don't be lazy. We take notice. We deserve it as fans, but more importantly, the animated universe deserves it. So I want to know, what did you think of Batman and Harley Quinn? And try to keep the comment section civil if that's even possible. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it on a more regular basis, be sure to subscribe to the channel and consider supporting us on Patreon. We want to make more videos here more frequently, but we can't do that without your help. Thanks for watching. If you were hoping for a hyper-detailed analysis of the movie, don't worry, we'll be doing an Easter egg video soon, and there's gotta be some kind of third video we could make about this movie. Now, what could the topic be?
In there, but I'm sure some fan online will figure out exactly how this works somehow. So, I mean, you know, when did Nightwing get his hair trimmed? Did this become before or after the Batman Beyond thing? I don't know.